Right. Thank you, Greg, and thank you, Lee, for that lead into NB2. My name's Nigel Tomkins. I'm the Program Manager for the Grass-Fed Beef Productivity Program at MLA, based in the Brisbane office, and really want to give our audience a bit of background as to why MLA would engage in this sort of space and why we see launching a new feature for the Northern Australian breeding herd as a priority moving forward for the next seven years. I suppose the best way to start this off is really put NB2 in the context that it is an initiative that started well over 12 months ago with the aim to make that contribution to producer profitability and sustainability. And in the long term, it also helps the Australian red meat industry to become more globally competitive. But the focus of NB2 is really addressing those priorities that have come through the NABRAC call year after year and addressing the reproductive efficiencies or lack of efficiency for the northern herd. Now, we talk about the northern herd a lot, and it's important to put into context that red meat production is a major land use, not only across Australia, but certainly for the northern states, particularly the Territory, Queensland and the Kimberley and the Pilbara regions of WA. If you start adding those numbers up, we've got about 26 million cattle across the north. Now, they're not all breeders, understandably, but the point here is that they're all managed under extensive production systems. And in most cases, because of significant wet, dry, seasonal changes, it becomes a very challenging environment to become efficient. The question there is, are we efficient in terms of simple productivity, more cattle, or is it actually efficient in terms of our profitability or our sustainability? And sustainability doesn't necessarily mean environmental sustainability. It can also mean sustainability of that beef business and that family operation across the north. So NB2 directly delivers to a large portion of the Australian beef herd and significant numbers across Northern Australia. So why did we take on NB2? Jason Strong made it quite clear that MLA could no longer continue to fund independent small projects which weren't brought together collectively or didn't deliver to the similar goals, and that programs of work were probably the best way to move forward. And programs that were bigger and bolder in terms of delivery to industry and actually created an environment where we could pull together a lot of those existing projects and deliver to a common goal. So I've managed to list about 5 of them here. There are a few more, but it's important to realise that if we go through that list, WA Beef Links is an initiative with the University of Western Australia looking at a whole of value chain approach for the red meat industry in Western Australia and working off the north-south alliances where we are moving cattle out of those northern rangelands down into southern systems where they are grass finished or finished in feedlot. So that's one of our bigger, bolder programs of work with a deliberate focus on value chains in the West Australian production system. CN 2030, or Carbon Neutral 2030 as it is also known, is MLA's program of work aiming to put the red meat sector into a carbon neutral place by 2030, looking at direct mitigation at the farm scale, but also how we can look again at the whole supply chain and reduce those greenhouse gas emissions from beef production, both on farm and through to the processing sector. Northern breeding business, that's what we're talking about here today. Again, it's come out clearly from addressing industry priorities and with a focus on the northern sector. Livestock Productivity Partnership is another bigger program of work. It brings together CSIRO, the University of New England, New South Wales, DPI, to deliver an R&D partnership to drive productivity from grazing livestock sector, both capturing R&D efforts at the development of new grasses and legumes, grazing management systems, but also going through to meat quality and delivering high value beef through to the Australian sector. And more recently, we've brought online the Sheep Reproduction Strategic Partnership, which in a way is a bit of a cousin to Northern Breeding Business. It's got a focus on sheep and addressing their weaning and their lambing issues for southern sectors. So there's at least 5 of the bigger, bolder programs of work now in place across MLA, delivering to key industry priorities. If we have a look at where it fits in, where some of these things have come from, and Lee's highlighted some of this already, particularly with NB2, which appears at the bottom of this table, but also other priorities that are coming through from Western Australia in terms of vaccines for sheep, for nematodes, also matching feed supply in a variable landscape under a changing environment. Again, priorities that are coming through from our regional councils. And also what is becoming more and more important for the southern system, again, is very similar to NB2 in saying we need to drive on-farm practice change to increase whole of life productivity from our breeder herds in southern Australia. So again, they're driven by industry committees identifying priorities where MLA can invest our levy and our MDC dollars. But going back to NB2, it's really come about because of the drive from Northern Australian Beef Research Council and resulted in Lee being commissioned through NABRAC to create the final report to scope out what NB2 was going to be about. Now, this is the final report which is currently available on the MLA website, people who want some more details. It really identifies the schedule for the next 7 years moving forward in how NB2 will be rolled out and what the expectations of delivery will be. It relies on industry being engaged and not only having an appetite to identify their current level of production, but also being able to identify what their potential level of productivity could be and looking at the steps required to move through going from your current state to what your potential state would be. And NB2 is also very much driven by addressing the calf mortality issue. So it's also putting in place interventions that address calf wastage, address that maiden heifer performance issue and general reproductive inefficiencies of the northern herd. There's no expectation that any producer that gets engaged in the program tries to do everything at once. They will have their own priorities on farm, and they need, in their own way and their own time, identify how to implement these interventions and also track their level of success to actually reach their potential on farm. Now, NB2, in a bit of a nutshell, really is about addressing calf loss for those northern herds, really trying to improve the profitability of northern enterprises, but also trying to increase the level of adoption. And when we talk about proven management practices, it's really looking at increased adoption of applied R&D that has been invested in over the years, but never really taken that next step to being applied on farm and making a difference on farm. So as Lee's highlighted, there are 3 pillars that underpin NB2, one around the herd, one around the feed base, and one around the environment. And we've recently gone through a process internally to allocate some funds to some R&D activities that deliver to 2 of those pillars at least, and next year we'll be looking at trying to fill the gap. But the link there is that those pillars do feed into that pathways to practice or that on-farm practice change. And a bit of a phrase that was coined the other day at a workshop in Townsville was that we're really looking for a keep it simple activity where you're looking at practice change on farm. It has to be relevant to operations, it has to be practical, and we really don't want to overcomplicate delivering of NB2 to producers who get involved. But the long-term gain is quite significant over the 7 years in terms of delivering an estimated $20 million per year for those enterprises in Northern Australia. So going back to the responses about accessing online and print media, I just want to finish off with, for those listening who aren't a member of the MLA, it's not difficult to do online. It doesn't require too much information, but it does give you access to not only feedback magazines, but in the e-newsletter, some weekly updates on prices and markets, and it does get you to have a voting right at the MLA's annual general meeting, which is held once a year in November. And also there are a number of invitations sent out through the year to other events that MLA directly delivers. So if you're not a member of MLA and you're interested in, then please follow that link and sign up. Now, staying in touch with MLA, again, relies on Friday feedback and social and website type media. There's a number of avenues there you can go through to MLA to find out what's going on, and it really just touches the tip of the iceberg in terms of activities that go on through the year in support of industry that MLA will deliver. So look, I'll just finish that slideshow and I'll just introduce Stu Barrett. Now we have Stu Barrett online today. Now Stu has a breeder grower operation near Biloela in central Queensland, and Stu's been involved in a workshop with NB2. But before Stu gives his thoughts on NB2, I might just let him introduce himself and provide the audience with a little bit more background as to his operation and where he sees the value of NB2. So over to you, Stuart.
Thanks very much, Nigel, and good afternoon, everyone. Yes, Stuart Barrett here. I'm a commercial beef breeder from Thangool Biloela area, and I became involved in NB2 through my placement on the Central Queensland Beef Research Committee, which Lee spoke of earlier. I was also part of another similar group of producers, which was called the Beef Plan, and there was a group called the CQ Beef Group here in Biloela that I got a lot of benefit from. But as a producer, the NB2 program is important because it will facilitate producer-led content and on-farm demonstration of practice and discussions between producers that will accelerate your business through adoption of new technologies, through adoption of better business practices, through adoption of research. And we know that we've got these gains to make in the north, and this is one thing that I consider would be the best way to do it, is in producer groups. It brings a really good level of commitment and camaraderie. You know, I got a lot out of it, and we were looking at things like leukemia production. We were doing business management stuff with benchmarking. We're doing property mapping. We could drive it basically any way we wanted to, and the facilitator was a lot of help. So I'm really getting behind NB2, and I think it's the number one way that we can drive businesses to become more sustainable into the future.
So, Stu, it's NB2's planned out for 7 years. I mean, we normally started this year, it'll go through to 2027. Do you think, for producers to be involved or for MLA to invest in a program, do you think 7 years is too long or not long enough?
No, well, I think it's about right, Nigel, because it does take a while to get a baseline on where your group's at. One of the goals of NB2 is to try and get as much feedback to producer groups as quickly as possible, so you can work out where you need to go to reach those NB2 goals of producing more beef. And I found that as we go along, you have this forming and storming and norming with your group, so you become very comfortable with the group, and that can help you go further with your business and in whatever direction that you need to become more sustainable.
So for your operations in CQ, Stu, what's your biggest challenge at the moment? What would you hope to get out of NB2 in the long term?
Well, I'd like to drill down further on my breeder fertility. There's a lot more recording I could do, and then use of data that I'm already recording. Yeah, it's also going over stuff that I've already been over, but that's been left behind for various reasons, changes in business structure and changes in practice along the way. So yeah, I'd hope to certainly do more recording of my breeder herd and try and make it more efficient.
Okay, Greg, how are we going for time? Because I'm conscious we.
Yeah, we might just keep moving forward, mainly because we are pressed with a little bit of time.
Right.
So
Okay.
What I might do is run the little video, if that's all right.
Yes. All right.
Okay, everyone. When I run this short video from David Foote from Australian Country Choice about NB2, you'll be able to hear the video as well as see it.
Good afternoon, everybody. Sorry I can't be with you. The ACC group is really pleased to be a part of the NB2 program going forward. We see productivity of our herds in the north as being a critical driver in profitability and sustainability. If we think of our cattle herds as we think of our factories, then 70% efficiency is not an efficient operation. So the opportunities the NB2 will provide through new research, old research redelivered, and collaboration between producer groups on shared learnings and understanding is going to enable us to identify the 1%ers or the 2%ers to lift that productivity across the north and therefore drive all the other things that increased productivity will do.
So, Greg, I think it's. I think we could thank Stu for his input, and we've probably got some time for some questions.